after abandoning me for 16 years. They want me to reconcile because they're having a baby. I told them they were the worst parents ever. Hi, this is my first time posting. I was born when my parents were very young. My mother was 16 and my father was 17. Both families decided it would be best for me if my maternal grandparents effectively raised me, allowing my biological parents to live their lives. This isn't one of those situations where the mother pretends her daughter's child is her own. I always knew who my real parents were. My father moved away when he was 18, but my mother stayed in my grandparents' house until she was 23, and I was around 7. However, we weren't close. She treated me more like an annoying little brother than a son. She never spent time with me, attended my school functions, showed interest in my academic work, or took me to do any fun activities. When I talked about my day, she'd roll her eyes or change the topic to shut me up. When she moved out, I barely saw her, only at family gatherings where she'd say an awkward hi and not even look at me. It hurt, even though by that point, I already considered my grandparents more my parents than her. My father was still living away. They weren't together anymore, but he would come once or twice a year to visit his own family around the holidays and always made it a point to visit me and take me to do some fun activity, like going to the cinema or my favorite restaurant. However, to me, he was more like a stranger than a dad. I couldn't understand why this man, who I saw maybe twice a year, was supposed to be the same as my friends' fathers who picked them up from school every day, went to their games, and played with them on the weekends. Fast forward to a year ago. My father moved back to the same city where we live. He tried to hang out with me more often, but I wasn't really interested, although sometimes I complied. I don't hate him, I just don't know him. I even had a bedroom in his apartment, which was cool because he lives in the city center. Behind everyone's back, both my parents had started hanging out, and a couple of months later, they announced they were dating. It was a shock. They asked me to move in with them to my father's apartment, which I refused, but they argued that we could finally be a family. I was about to start an argument when my grandma just said that changing school districts would be very inconvenient and I could lose all my friends, and the situation resolved itself. However, my parents didn't let go of the idea. They asked for me to spend more time with them, which was particularly frustrating because even though I never had any particular tension with my father, I most definitely do with my mother. I don't like being around her because she's treated me poorly my whole life, and I feel like she's only trying to save face because she knows my dad wants me there. Now on to the issue. Last week, they both came into my grandparents' house and announced they were going to buy a house nearby in the neighborhood so that I could finally move in with them. I immediately said no. When they said that changing schools would no longer be an issue, I found myself in a corner and said that was never the problem. I simply don't see them as my parents and don't want to live with them. That's when they dropped the bomb on us. Not only did they want me to move in with them so we could be a family, but my mother was pregnant, so we were going to be a bigger family. I was shocked and blew my lid on them. I told them they were the worst parents in the world and that they abandoned me for 16 years. Now they were going to bring another child into the world and do the same to them. And they never apologized for treating me like garbage and making me feel like I wasn't supposed to exist. Only now that they feel like they care, they want to be my family. My mother screamed back at me, telling me I was a brat and that she wasn't going to make the same mistakes twice while raising her second baby. I told her she never raised me to begin with, and my father said they were young and trying to do the best they could. Well, guess what? The best they could do was pretty awful. I stormed out, went to my room, and cried. I've been very depressed for the last week. They have both called and texted since, but I've ignored them. My grandparents agree with me that I shouldn't move and that my parents shouldn't expect me to be all loving and forgiving after how they've treated me. However, they believe my parents are starting a new chapter of their lives now, that they are more mature and stable, which leaves me behind. I've also had time to think that I'm the same age my mother was when she had me, and what a huge responsibility that must have been. However, I still can't forgive them for the way I reacted to the news. Edit. Thank you, everyone, for the verdict of the NTA. I feel better, and it has somewhat cleared my mind. Also, a huge thank you to everyone who commented about how awesome my grandparents are. I'm planning on showing them this post so they can see how much everyone appreciates them. They deserve all the love and appreciation I can give them and more. I've also concluded that I have a lot of resentments and unanswered questions, as well as misgivings about the future, that I need to set straight, primarily with my father. He needs to know how I grew up and why he abandoned me. I also feel like I need to warn him about my mother, because I'm worried about my sibling being abandoned and mistreated like I was. So I'm preparing a list of points and questions that I want to bring up to him, and we'll meet tomorrow or the day after. I'll confront him with all of these to hopefully get some sort of closure or resolution. Verdict. Relevant comments. OP responds to a comment calling out his father. I'm starting to feel like there are a lot of things I don't know about the time when I was born and why I was effectively abandoned. My other set of grandparents, paternal, don't live far away, and I see them occasionally, but it's always more uncomfortable with them. They have other children and grandchildren, whereas my mother is an only child. So when I visit them, I feel like the odd one out because I'm usually alone in a big family environment. As far as I'm aware, when he was away, he didn't keep much contact with my mother either. This is just since he came back. That's why I feel like I need to talk with him and set things straight because I feel so lost. OP on his father's proposal of therapy. My father talked about getting us into family therapy a while ago, but I thought it was a stupid idea. Perhaps I should look into it just for myself, perhaps with my grandparents too. OP reacts to the comments. I want to share this post with my grandparents because, honestly, the most common response has been how great they are. I love them so much, and I tell them all the time, but I feel like it's never enough. It's always great to take the time to tell the people you are most grateful to how much you appreciate them and how much of an impact they've had on your life. Update 3 days later. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for the responses. They really helped a lot. It's been an emotional couple of days, and a lot has happened. My mind is a little dispersed, but I felt like I owed you all an update, and I'm trying to be as clear as possible. For those who didn't read my original post, the gist of it is basically that my 16-year-old parents had me when they were very young, 16 and 17 years old. They got separated and left me to be raised by my maternal grandparents. My mother was around but couldn't care less about me. My dad went away, and we had very sporadic but positive contact. Now he's come back. They're back together. They're having a new baby, and they want me back in their lives. I refused and told them they're horrible and shouldn't have kids, which brings us to the original post. First of all, I shared my post with my grandparents, and they were so surprised by it. They were very happy to see how many people commented about how amazing they are, and I took the opportunity to tell them how much I love them and appreciate everything they've done for me. They are my real parents, and nothing will ever change that. There were some tears, and they told me they loved me and were proud of me. They never thought of themselves as doing something special or worth so much appreciation. They were just taking care of family, but they are the best. After that, I started trying to collect my thoughts and arranged a meeting with my father to discuss the things that were bothering me, why he abandoned me, why he thought he could just reappear in my life like that I wasn't going to move in with them, and that I didn't consider them my parents because they never acted as such, etc. We met at a park, and he went to hug me, but I stepped away. He looked hurt and apologized for what happened the other day. He gave a speech about transitioning into living together part-time and respecting my boundaries. I went blank. I didn't expect him to talk, so I pulled out my phone and showed him the post I made. He started reading it in silence. After a while, he read it all and some responses, and he asked me if this was true. I said yes. He asked if I had questions he would answer honestly. I asked what happened when I was born. He told me that when my mother got pregnant, all options were laid on the table,